fourth graders. In today's video, you're gonna learn about the first reading lesson, Fishing for Dinner. Let's get started. What are the objectives of this lesson? To learn more about fishing and fishing tools, to focus on the vocabulary words, point to, wiggle, giggle, reel, wink, and use them in sentences, to focus on the genre realistic fiction and explain more about its characteristics. It's warm-up time. Let's have a look at this picture. What can you tell about it? The boy in the picture is fishing, right? But what is the boy using? What fishing tool? He is using a fishing rod to catch some fish. Let's start with the questions. Have you ever went fishing before? With whom did you go? Where did you go for fishing? What tools did you take? How many fish did you catch? Did you enjoy fishing? How did you feel? Let's try to name some fishing tools. Lure, fishing line, fishing rod, hook, bait, fishing net, tackle box. And it's vocabulary time. What do you think is this word? Look at the picture and try to figure out the word. So the word is point to. Let's have a look at the second picture. What do you think is the word? Giggle. What about the third? Wiggle. What about this? Reel. And the last word is wink. And now it's time to read the meanings of these 5 vocabulary, and we have to try to use these words in sentences. Let's begin with number 1. Point to. Point to is an action verb. What does point to mean? To direct attention to someone or something by moving one's finger. Let's try to use point to in 2 sentences. Sentence 1. Can you point to where I am on this map? Sentence 2. The teacher pointed to me to stand up and give her the correct answer. Number 2. Giggle. Giggle is an action verb. What does it mean? Laugh lightly and repeatedly in a silly way. Sentence 1. The children giggled when the clown walked on stage. Sentence 2. I started giggling on the bus when I thought about the funny story you told me this morning. Number 3. Wiggle. Wiggle is a verb. What is the meaning of this word? To move up and down or from side to side with small rapid movements. Sentence 1. The puppy wiggled with excitement. Sentence 2. The doctor asked me to wiggle my toes. Number 4, reel. Reel is an action verb. What does it mean? To turn or move round and round. Sentence 1. The man was trying to reel out the electric cable carefully. Sentence 2. It took my dad almost an hour to reel the fish in. Number 5, and it's the last word, wink. Wink is an action verb. What is the meaning of the word wink? Close and open one eye quickly to indicate that something is a joke or as a signal of greeting. Sentence 1. Lama smiled brightly and gave me a wink. Sentence 2. Tom winked at Mary and blew her a kiss. And it's reading time. The title is Fishing for Dinner. Grandma took Abby fishing at the lake. I'm going to catch a big fish for dinner, Abby said. She swung her fishing pole, but her line didn't drop into the water. Where did it go? Abby asked. Grandma pointed to a tree. If you want to catch dinner for us, Grandma said, you have to get your line in the lake first. Abby giggled while Grandma untangled her hook from the tree. Abby swung her fishing pole again. She smiled when her hook hit the water. Grandma shook her head. If you want to catch dinner for us, Grandma said, you have to bait your hook next time. A worm wiggled between Grandma's fingers and Abby giggled. I caught a fish, shouted Abby. She reeled in her line, but her hook was full of grass from the bottom of the lake. Grandma removed the grass and put a worm on the hook. Abby swung her fishing pole again and cheered when her hook dropped into the lake. If you want to catch dinner for us, Grandma said, you have to be quiet so you don't scare the fish away. Abby covered her mouth and giggled into her hand. I caught a fish, Abby shouted. This time, when she reeled in her line, an old tin can hung from her hook. Grandma removed the tin can and put another worm on the hook. Abby swung her fishing pole again. She didn't say a word when her hook hit the water. Now you're going to catch dinner for us, Grandma said, winking at Abby. I caught a fish, a big fish, Abby shouted. She struggled to pull in someone's muddy sneaker. We can't eat grass, a tin can, or a sneaker for dinner, Abby said. Grandma laughed. If you want to catch dinner for us, she began. Abby exclaimed, you'll have to take me to the nearest grocery store. And now I chose some parts of the story to ask you some questions so that you can check your understanding for the story. Let's begin with the first question. Who took Abby for fishing? Abby's grandma took her for fishing. Number 2, where did Abby and her grandma go for fishing? They went fishing at the lake. Now, another parts from the story. What bait Abby's grandma had? Abby's grandma had a worm. And this is the worm. Can you see? Another parts. What was Abby's hook full of? It was full of a grass from the bottom of the lake. What did the grandma put on the hook after she removed the grass? She put a worm. What advice did the grandma give Abby about fishing? Grandma told Abby to be quiet so that she doesn't scare the fish away. What did Abby fish? She got an old tin can. Can you see the old tin can? What did Abby fish this time? Abby got a muddy sneaker. And this is a muddy sneaker. Was Abby lucky? Why? No, she wasn't because she didn't catch any fish. Did they have fish for dinner? From where did they get the fish? Yes, they had. They bought the fish from the grocery store. And let me show you the grocery store. Comprehension questions. Choose the best answer. What two important things one needs for fishing? A fishing pole and some bait, a fishing pole and some grass, sneakers and some trees. So the correct answer is A. When Abby said, I'm going to catch a big fish for dinner, she was uncertain about catching a fish, merely joking about catching a fish, certain about catching a fish. The correct answer is C. When Abby giggled, she showed that she was happy, unhappy, or angry. So the correct answer is A. When Abby reeled in her line, she fell on her line, pulled in her line, or left her line. So the correct answer is B. After reading the story, we conclude that Abby is highly experienced in fishing. Abby has some experience in fishing. Abby is totally inexperienced in fishing. The correct answer is C. At the end of the story, we assume that Abby will have fish for dinner, won't have fish for dinner, will have steak for dinner. So the correct answer is A. Read the text and then fill the step chart with proper information about what happened each time Abby swung her fishing pole. State what she had fished. The first time Abby swung the fishing pole was tangled to a tree, so Abby didn't fish anything. The second time, she fished the grass from the bottom of the lake because she didn't bake her hook. The third time, She fished an old tin can while scaring the fish with her giggling. The fourth time, Abby fished a muddy sneaker. Now, lesson genre. Is fishing for dinner fiction or non-fiction? Now let's have a look at fiction books. What are fiction books? Fiction books are not true. These books tell a story that has been made up by the author. Non-fiction books are true. These books tell about real things, people, events, and places. So what do you think? Is fishing for dinner fiction or non-fiction? And remember that fishing for dinner is a story, and all stories are fiction. So, fishing for dinner is fiction. What type of fiction is fishing for dinner? We've decided that fishing for dinner is a fiction, right? But what type of fiction is it? Let's have a look at different types of fiction and then we can decide. These are different types of fiction. Let's start with the first one, realistic fiction. So, is fishing for dinner realistic fiction? Let me read and tell you about realistic fiction and other types. Realistic fiction is a story that is not real, but the story could happen. Science fiction. A fantasy story with science often takes place in the future. Historical fiction, a made-up story that takes place in the past. Mystery, a story where the characters are trying to solve a puzzle. Fantasy, a story that has events that could never happen in real life. Poetry, verses that often rhyme and evoke feeling. Informational, a non-fiction book that gives facts about real things. Biography, a story about someone's life written by someone else. Autobiography, a story about someone's life written by that person. So what do you think? What type of fiction is fishing for dinner? It is realistic fiction. Now, let's read and learn more about realistic fiction. The characters are made-up characters that could exist in real life. Their behaviors are realistic. Who are the characters in Fishing for Dinner? Abby and her grandma, right? So these characters are made-up characters that could exist in real life. The story could really happen today. Settings and events could exist in real life. What is the setting for the story Fishing for Dinner? Where did the story mainly take place? So the setting is the lake, and the lake is a real place. Let's continue. There's a problem and a believable solution. So what was the problem in the story Fishing for Dinner? Abby was inexperienced in fishing, right? So how was the problem solved? She went to a grocery store to buy some fish. And at last, the author is writing about the character. So the author or the writer is not writing about himself. He is writing about the character. So the author will not use I, me, or mine. That was everything for today's lesson. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching.